More than half of the Earth's surface lies hidden beneath the oceans, and deep below the waves, far beyond the reach of sunlight, vast flat landscapes stretch across the seafloor on a planetary scale. These immense regions are called abyssal plains. On global maps of the ocean floor, they appear again and again, spreading across entire basins of the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean. Some of these plains extend for thousands of kilometers. Many are so wide and continuous that they rival the largest land regions on Earth. Yet most people have never heard of them, and few have seen how they are arranged across the planet. So, where exactly are these enormous seafloor plains located? How are they distributed across different ocean basins? And how do scientists organize and map such vast areas of the deep ocean? In this video, we'll take a global view of the spatial distribution of abyssal plains, examining how these expansive seafloor regions are positioned across the world's oceans using large-scale mapping frameworks and basin-wide reference grids. If you enjoy calm and fascinating science about the hidden structure of our planet, make sure to subscribe to Quiet Facts so you don't miss future videos. If you find this topic interesting, leave a like and feel free to share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Global mapping frameworks identify abyssal plains as extensive low-relief seafloor surfaces positioned across multiple ocean basins. These surfaces appear on planetary bathymetric charts as broad fields located between major structural boundaries of the ocean floor. Global distribution grids organize these areas using standardized coordinate systems applied across marine mapping datasets. Large-scale ocean basin maps display abyssal plains as spatially continuous zones positioned between continental margin regions and central basin structures. Many mapping frameworks mark these zones using consistent bathymetric intervals and contour spacing. The resulting map grids present abyssal plains as repeated geographic categories rather than isolated features. Global ocean atlases frequently divide seafloor space into reference sectors that support uniform indexing of abyssal plain locations. Each sector corresponds to a coordinate range that allows comparison across ocean basins. This sector approach enables cataloging of plain locations across Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian basin frameworks. Bathymetric compilation projects apply consistent spatial layers that register abyssal plains alongside ridges, trenches, and plateaus as separate positional classes. These layers provide a structured map environment for identifying the relative placement of each feature type. Abyssal plains appear as extensive planar regions inside these global spatial registries. International seafloor mapping initiatives maintain standardized data grids derived from satellite altimetry and ship-based surveys. These grids support consistent global representation of abyssal plain fields across digital bathymetric models. Each mapped plane occupies a defined position inside the broader planetary coordinate framework. Global reference charts also classify abyssal plains using indexed geographic labels that correspond to basin sectors and sub-basin divisions. These indexed positions allow large numbers of plains to appear as organized entries inside planetary seafloor catalogs. The mapping grid, therefore, functions as a structural reference system for locating abyssal plains across the world ocean. Ocean basin reference segmentation organizes the global ocean floor into large spatial divisions used in marine mapping systems. These divisions correspond to the major ocean basins recognized in planetary bathymetric frameworks. The Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans represent the principal reference domains in most global seafloor atlases. Each basin functions as a primary spatial container for indexing abyssal plain locations. Mapping systems assign abyssal plain fields to basin-level categories before additional regional subdivision occurs. Basin segmentation therefore provides the first structural layer in global seafloor classification grids. Bathymetric datasets often apply basin boundaries derived from continental outlines and large-scale seafloor structures. These boundaries appear on global charts as clear spatial partitions separating one ocean basin from another. Abyssal plains located inside each basin are registered relative to these large geographic divisions. Many global seafloor databases maintain basin-coded identifiers that link mapped plains to their corresponding ocean sectors. Each identifier includes a basin reference label that remains consistent across mapping projects and marine geospatial archives. This labeling system supports cross-dataset comparison of abyssal plain positions. Ocean basin segmentation also supports standardized indexing within digital bathymetric models. Large data grids used in global seafloor mapping frequently group abyssal plain surfaces according to basin location. These groupings allow plain distributions to be viewed as structured geographic patterns across planetary ocean space. International oceanographic chart series often apply basin reference layers before introducing smaller regional map partitions. Abyssal plains therefore appear first as basin-associated features inside these global mapping frameworks. Their placement remains tied to the spatial structure defined by the major ocean basins. This basin segmentation framework forms a consistent organizational layer across many marine mapping initiatives. Abyssal plains are cataloged and referenced through these basin divisions inside planetary bathymetric registries. The result is a global grid in which plain locations correspond to stable ocean basin reference sectors. Global seafloor mapping systems frequently apply hemispheric divisions as an additional spatial layer for organizing abyssal plain locations. These divisions separate the planetary ocean's surface into northern and southern hemispheric sectors using the equatorial reference line. Abyssal plains are registered inside these hemispheric sectors as part of large-scale geographic classification frameworks. Bathymetric atlases often display hemispheric boundaries as primary reference lines that intersect multiple ocean basins. Abyssal plains positioned in each hemisphere appear as grouped geographic features distributed across basin interiors. This hemispheric framework allows plain locations to be indexed according to their placement relative to the equatorial division. In many global chart systems, hemispheric sectors function as broad geographic categories that sit above basin-level subdivisions. Abyssal plains, associated with the North Pacific, North Atlantic, and northern portions of the Indian Ocean, appear inside the Northern Hemispheric Registry. Plains located in the South Pacific, South Atlantic, and Southern Indian Ocean appear inside the Southern Hemispheric Registry. Digital bathymetric databases frequently encode hemispheric identifiers as part of geographic metadata for seafloor features. These identifiers connect mapped abyssal plains to their corresponding hemisphere while maintaining basin-level classification. The hemispheric attribute provides a consistent spatial reference used across multiple oceanographic data archives. Large-scale ocean maps often present hemispheric segmentation through coordinate grids that emphasize latitude-based positioning. Abyssal plains appear in these frameworks as extensive seafloor surfaces, occupying defined latitudinal zones across several basins. Their placement remains linked to hemispheric spatial categories rather than to local geological interpretation. Global seafloor registries maintain hemispheric indexing systems that support comparative cataloging of abyssal plains across planetary ocean space. Each mapped plane is associated with a hemisphere through geographic coordinates recorded in bathymetric datasets. This hemispheric segmentation provides an additional structural layer for locating abyssal plains inside the global distribution grid. Global ocean mapping systems often apply inter-basin alignment frameworks that position abyssal plains within a coordinated planetary grid. These frameworks link spatial references across separate ocean basins while maintaining consistent geographic indexing. Abyssal plains recorded in one basin can therefore be positioned relative to plains located in other basins through shared coordinate structures. Interbasin spatial alignment commonly relies on latitude and longitude reference lines that extend continuously across the global ocean surface. Abyssal plains appearing in different basins occupy positions that correspond to these global coordinate intervals. The coordinate framework allows plains distributed across distant basins to be located within the same planetary spatial matrix. Bathymetric atlases frequently integrate basin datasets into unified seafloor grids. These grids present abyssal plains as mapped fields distributed across the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans inside one continuous reference environment. Alignment between basins occurs through shared projection systems used in large-scale ocean cartography. Global bathymetric compilations often merge multiple regional surveys into common digital terrain models. In these models, abyssal plains appear as spatial units positioned relative to other plains across basin boundaries. The merged grid allows the placement of plains in one basin to be compared directly with positions recorded in neighboring basins. Large oceanographic databases apply inter-basin indexing codes that group mapped plains according to planetary coordinate ranges. Each abyssal plain is linked to these ranges through geographic metadata stored in seafloor datasets. The indexing system supports consistent alignment of plain locations across global ocean registries. International seafloor mapping initiatives maintain standardized projection frameworks that support this cross-basin alignment. Abyssal plains mapped in separate ocean sectors appear inside the same reference geometry when displayed in global bathymetric charts. The result is a unified spatial framework where plains across multiple basins occupy coordinated positions within the planetary ocean grid. Global seafloor mapping systems often register abyssal plains in relation to continental boundary zones that define the outer limits of continental landmasses. These boundaries appear in planetary bathymetric charts as major geographic outlines, separating continental regions from ocean basin interiors. Abyssal plains are frequently positioned at measurable distances from these continental reference lines. Many global ocean atlases display continental margins as continuous structural borders that frame adjacent ocean basin areas. Abyssal plains napped inside basin interiors appear spatially separated from these continental outlines by transitional seafloor regions. The mapping framework records this spatial relationship using standardized distance and coordinate references. Bathymetric datasets commonly include continental boundary layers that represent the geographic edges of continental blocks. These layers provide a fixed positional reference for cataloging nearby seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains appear in these datasets as mapped fields located seaward of continental margin zones. Global marine charts often show continental adjacency sectors where basin interiors transition away from continental boundaries. Abyssal plains associated with these sectors are recorded as large planar regions positioned beyond the continental boundary framework. Their placement is expressed through geographic coordinates and basin-scale map grids. Digital seafloor registries maintain geographic metadata that links mapped abyssal plains to the nearest continental boundary sectors. Each plane occupies a defined position relative to continental outlines recorded in global bathymetric layers. This relationship allows planes across different basins to be indexed through consistent spatial reference points. International mapping initiatives integrate continental boundary datasets with planetary bathymetric models. In these integrated frameworks, Abyssal plains appear as extensive seafloor surfaces situated away from continental outlines, but still reference to them through geographic positioning. The adjacency framework therefore functions as a stable spatial reference layer for locating abyssal plains across the world ocean. Global ocean mapping systems maintain registry indexes that catalog abyssal plains as geographic entries inside large bathymetric datasets. These registries organize mapped plains according to standardized spatial identifiers linked to global coordinate systems. Each recorded plain occupies a defined position in relation to ocean basin frameworks and planetary reference grids. Many international seafloor databases apply indexed classification codes that associate abyssal plains with specific geographic sectors. These codes often include basin designations, coordinate ranges, and chart reference numbers. The registry structure allows numerous plains across different ocean regions to appear as organized entries within the same global catalog. Bathymetric atlases frequently incorporate registry tables that list abyssal plains alongside other seafloor features using consistent indexing formats. Each entry contains geographic coordinates that correspond to mapped positions on planetary seafloor charts. The registry system provides a stable reference layer used for identifying plains across multiple ocean basins. Digital oceanographic archives maintain structured datasets where abyssal plains are stored as spatial objects within global terrain models. Each object contains geographic metadata, including latitude, longitude, and basin classification. These metadata fields allow registry systems to locate plains precisely inside planetary bathymetric frameworks. International mapping initiatives also integrate abyssal plain registries into large geospatial databases that support oceanographic research and chart production. These databases maintain consistent naming conventions and indexing standards across many mapping projects. Abyssal plains appear as catalogued geographic entities that remain stable across different map versions and digital platforms. Global registry indexes therefore function as a structural catalog for organizing abyssal plain locations throughout the world ocean. Each mapped plain is recorded as an indexed geographic unit tied to standardized coordinate references. The registry framework supports consistent identification of abyssal plains across global seafloor mapping systems. The North Pacific Basin contains several large sectors where abyssal plains are positioned across broad interior regions of the ocean floor. Global bathymetric charts identify these sectors as extensive areas located between continental margins surrounding the basin. These sectors appear across the northern portion of the Pacific Ocean on planetary seafloor maps. Ocean mapping systems frequently organize the North Pacific seafloor into multiple geographic sectors to support consistent spatial indexing. Abyssal plains recorded in this region are associated with coordinate ranges that correspond to these basin sectors. Each sector functions as a reference unit for locating plains inside the larger Pacific Basin framework. Large bathymetric compilations often display North Pacific abyssal plains as distributed fields extending across central and eastern basin interiors. These plains occupy positions recorded through latitude and longitude coordinates used in global mapping grids. The mapped sectors provide a consistent structure for cataloging plain locations within the Northern Pacific region. Several international oceanographic datasets maintain regional indexing layers that classify abyssal plains according to North Pacific geographic divisions. These divisions correspond to broad spatial zones covering the basin interior. Abyssal plains associated with these zones appear as distinct entries within seafloor registries that track Pacific Basin features. Digital seafloor terrain models frequently include sector-based layers that divide the North Pacific into spatial reference areas. Each area contains mapped abyssal plains positioned according to geographic coordinates derived from bathymetric surveys. The sector framework allows plains across the northern Pacific to be displayed as organized geographic groupings. Global ocean atlases often present these placement sectors as stable geographic regions used for chart indexing and data organization. Abyssal plains, recorded inside these sectors, remain linked to the larger Pacific Basin coordinate grid. This sector structure provides a consistent spatial reference for representing abyssal plain distribution across the North Pacific Basin. Central sectors of the Pacific Basin contain several mapped regions where abyssal plains are positioned across broad interior portions of the ocean floor. Global bathymetric charts identify these regions as expansive planar areas situated far from surrounding continental margins. These reference regions appear prominently in the central Pacific portion of planetary seafloor maps. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the Pacific Basin into geographic reference regions to support consistent spatial indexing. Central Pacific abyssal plains are assigned to these regions according to their geographic coordinates within the basin interior. Each region represents a defined section of the Pacific Basin grid used in global seafloor registries. Large bathymetric compilations often display these central Pacific regions as extended seafloor fields occupying mid-basin sectors. Abyssal plains located in these areas are recorded as continuous surfaces mapped through satellite-derived bathymetry and ship survey datasets. Their geographic positions correspond to coordinate ranges used across international ocean mapping programs. Many global seafloor atlases maintain regional classification layers that identify Central Pacific abyssal plains through basin sector labels. These labels correspond to geographic zones covering large parts of the Pacific interior. Abyssal plains within these zones appear as mapped units positioned relative to the surrounding basin boundaries. Digital terrain models of the Pacific Ocean frequently include region-based indexing structures that group abyssal plains according to central basin location. Each mapped plain is linked to a coordinate-defined reference region inside the larger Pacific spatial grid. These models allow multiple plains across the central Pacific to be displayed as organized geographic groupings. International ocean mapping initiatives often present these Central Pacific reference regions as stable spatial sectors within the Pacific Basin framework. Abyssal plains associated with these sectors are cataloged using consistent geographic metadata across global bathymetric databases. The region structure provides a standardized method for representing abyssal plain placement across the Central Pacific Basin. The southern portion of the Pacific Basin contains several extended geographic bands where abyssal plains appear across wide areas of the ocean floor. Global bathymetric charts represent these bands as large spatial zones occupying the interior sectors of the South Pacific. These distribution bands extend across multiple coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping grids. Ocean mapping frameworks frequently divide the South Pacific Basin into latitudinal and regional bands that support consistent geographic indexing. Abyssal plains located in the southern Pacific interior are assigned to these distribution bands according to their latitude and longitude positions. Each band corresponds to a defined portion of the basin used in global seafloor registries. Large bathymetric datasets display South Pacific abyssal plains as extensive planar fields distributed across central and southeastern basin regions. These plains appear inside mapping bands that span large areas of the South Pacific Basin interior. Their positions are recorded using coordinate intervals applied across international oceanographic mapping systems. Many global seafloor atlases maintain band-based classification layers for organizing abyssal plain locations within the South Pacific. These layers divide the basin interior into spatial corridors that extend across wide geographic ranges. Abyssal plains mapped inside these corridors are catalogued as grouped geographic surfaces associated with each band. Digital terrain models of the Pacific Ocean frequently represent the South Pacific abyssal plains as continuous fields distributed across these mapped bands. Each field is positioned inside the basin grid through geographic coordinates derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry. The band structure allows plains across the Southern Pacific to be organized into coherent spatial groupings. International bathymetric mapping initiatives present these South Pacific distribution bands as stable geographic sectors within the broader Pacific Basin framework. Abyssal plains associated with these bands remain linked to the basin coordinate grid through standardized spatial metadata. The band framework provides a consistent reference system for representing abyssal plain placement across the South Pacific Basin. Several grouped regions of abyssal plains occur across the western portion of the Pacific Basin. Global bathymetric charts identify these areas as clusters of broad planar seafloor surfaces positioned within Western Pacific Basin sectors. These clusters appear across multiple coordinate ranges in the Western Pacific portion of planetary seafloor maps. Ocean mapping systems frequently organize the Western Pacific Basin into spatial sectors that support consistent geographic indexing. Abyssal plains located in these sectors are registered as grouped surfaces associated with the Western Basin region. Each cluster corresponds to a mapped geographic grouping recorded in global seafloor datasets. Large bathymetric compilations display Western Pacific abyssal plains as several separate planar fields distributed across basin interiors, adjacent to island arc regions and marginal seas. These plains appear as clustered features positioned inside Western Pacific Basin coordinates. Their placement is recorded through latitude and longitude references used in global mapping grids. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains by Western Pacific geographic sectors. Plains associated with these sectors appear in mapped plains, and these sectors appear in mapped groups of the basin interior. Each group is indexed through geographic metadata stored in global bathymetric registries. Digital seafloor terrain models frequently represent Western Pacific abyssal plains as multiple planar units distributed across neighboring map sectors. These units appear as cluster formations when displayed across large Pacific Basin grids. Their spatial grouping reflects coordinate-defined placement rather than geological interpretation. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that catalog Western Pacific abyssal plains through basin sector indexing. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific Western Pacific sector within the broader Pacific Basin framework. The cluster arrangement therefore represents a spatial grouping of abyssal plains recorded within Western Pacific Basin reference sectors. Eastern sectors of the Pacific Basin contain elongated geographic corridors where abyssal plains are distributed across the basin interior. Global bathymetric charts display these corridors as extended planar regions positioned along the eastern portion of the Pacific Basin grid. These corridors appear across multiple coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping systems. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently organize the Eastern Pacific into corridor-shaped reference sectors that support geographic indexing of seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in this region are associated with these sectors according to their geographic coordinates. Each corridor corresponds to a spatial band used for cataloging abyssal plain placement within the Eastern Pacific Basin. Large bathymetric datasets show Eastern Pacific abyssal plains as continuous planar fields extending across long sections of the basin interior. These fields occupy mapped corridors that run across several degrees of latitude and longitude. within the basin coordinate framework. Their positions are recorded through standardized grid systems used in global seafloor atlases. Many international oceanographic chart series maintain regional classification layers that divide the Eastern Pacific Basin into corridor-like sectors. Abyssal plains within these sectors appear as mapped surfaces aligned along these geographic pathways. Each corridor grouping allows plain locations to be indexed consistently within global bathymetric registries. Digital terrain models of the Pacific Ocean frequently represent Eastern Pacific abyssal plains as spatial units arranged along these mapped corridors. Each unit occupies a defined coordinate position within the basin grid, derived from satellite altimetry and survey bathymetry. The corridor structure allows multiple planes across the Eastern Pacific to be organized into aligned geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry frameworks that associate abyssal plains with Eastern Pacific Basin sectors defined as corridors. Each mapped plane is linked to a specific coordinate-defined corridor within the broader Pacific Basin reference grid. This corridor arrangement provides a structured representation of abyssal plain placement across the Eastern Pacific Basin. Global oceanographic datasets maintain basin-wide registries that catalog abyssal plains across the Pacific Ocean. These registries organize mapped plains as geographic entries linked to coordinate positions within the Pacific Basin grid. Each entry represents a recorded seafloor surface associated with a specific location inside the basin framework. Large bathymetric databases frequently assign indexed identifiers to abyssal plains distributed across the Pacific Basin. These identifiers connect individual plains to geographic sectors, such as northern, central, western, and southern Pacific regions. The indexing structure allows multiple plains across the basin to appear as organized records inside the same registry system. Many international seafloor atlases integrate Pacific Basin registry layers into global bathymetric compilations. These layers list abyssal plains using standardized naming conventions and geographic coordinate references. Each mapped plane is therefore cataloged as part of a structured dataset representing Pacific Basin seafloor surfaces. Digital terrain models of the Pacific Ocean often store abyssal plains as spatial objects within geospatial databases. Each object contains coordinate metadata that locates the plane within the Pacific Basin reference grid. These datasets allow registry systems to display planes across the basin as indexed geographic units. Ocean mapping initiatives frequently maintain registry tables that associate abyssal plains with specific Pacific Basin sectors. Each table entry records geographic attributes used for mapping and data comparison across multiple bathymetric surveys. The registry framework allows planes distributed across distant Pacific sectors to remain part of a unified catalog. Pacific-wide abyssal plain registries therefore function as organizational systems that structure spatial information for the basin interior. Every mapped plane is recorded through coordinate-based identifiers connected to Pacific Basin reference layers. This registry framework supports consistent representation of abyssal plains throughout the Pacific Ocean mapping grid. Several placement sectors for abyssal plains occur across the northern portion of the Atlantic Basin. Global bathymetric charts represent these sectors as broad, planar seafloor areas located between the surrounding continental margins of North America, Europe, and Northwest Africa. These sectors appear across the northern Atlantic portion of planetary ocean maps. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the North Atlantic Basin into geographic sectors used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in this basin are associated with these sectors according to latitude and longitude coordinates recorded in bathymetric datasets. Each sector corresponds to a defined spatial area within the Northern Atlantic Basin grid. Large bathymetric compilations display North Atlantic abyssal plains as extensive planar regions occupying interior basin sectors adjacent to continental margins. These plains appear in mapping datasets as wide seafloor surfaces extending across several coordinate ranges of the basin interior. Their placement is recorded through global coordinate systems applied across marine mapping frameworks. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain regional classification layers that categorize abyssal plains within North Atlantic placement sectors. Plains associated with these sectors are recorded as geographic surfaces positioned relative to the basin boundaries. Each sector grouping supports consistent indexing across seafloor mapping projects. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean frequently represent North Atlantic abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across several mapped basin sectors. Each unit occupies a coordinate-defined location inside the North Atlantic Basin grid, derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry. The sector structure allows plains across the Northern Atlantic to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that catalog abyssal plains using North Atlantic sector identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific sector within the basin scale coordinate framework. This placement system provides a structured spatial reference for representing abyssal plains across the North Atlantic Basin. Central portions of the Atlantic Basin contain several geographic bands where abyssal plains are distributed across broad interior areas of the ocean floor. Global bathymetric charts represent these bands as elongated planar regions positioned between the surrounding continental margins of the Atlantic Basin. These distribution bands extend across central Atlantic coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor maps. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the Atlantic Basin interior into spatial bands that support consistent indexing of seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in the central Atlantic appear inside these bands according to their geographic coordinates within the basin grid. Each band represents a defined spatial corridor used for organizing abyssal plain locations across the central Atlantic Basin. Large bathymetric compilations display central Atlantic abyssal plains as extensive planar surfaces distributed across interior basin zones. These surfaces occupy coordinate-defined bands that extend across multiple degrees of latitude and longitude in the Atlantic Basin mapping framework. Their placement is recorded through global coordinate systems used in marine geospatial datasets. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains by central Atlantic distribution bands. Plains associated with these bands appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned relative to adjacent continental margins. Each band grouping allows consistent geographic indexing within Atlantic Basin mapping systems. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units arranged across these central basin bands. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The band structure allows plains across the central Atlantic Basin to be organized into coherent geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry frameworks that associate abyssal plains with central Atlantic spatial bands. Each mapped plain is linked to a coordinate-based band inside the Atlantic Basin grid used in global bathymetric registries. This band structure provides a standardized reference for representing abyssal plain placement across the central Atlantic Basin. Several reference regions for abyssal plains occur across the southern portion of the Atlantic Basin. Global bathymetric charts identify these regions as extensive planar seafloor areas located between the continental margins of South America and Africa. These regions appear across the South Atlantic portion of planetary seafloor mapping grids. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the South Atlantic basin into geographic reference regions used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in the basin interior are assigned to these regions according to latitude and longitude coordinates recorded in bathymetric datasets. Each region represents a defined section of the South Atlantic basin grid. Large bathymetric compilations display South Atlantic abyssal plains as wide planar surfaces positioned across interior sectors of the basin. These plains occupy coordinate-defined areas that extend across multiple degrees of latitude and longitude within the basin framework. Their placement is recorded through global coordinate systems applied across ocean mapping programs. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that organize abyssal plains according to South Atlantic regional sectors. Plains associated with these sectors appear as grouped geographic surfaces positioned relative to the surrounding continental boundaries. Each region grouping supports consistent spatial indexing in Atlantic basin datasets. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across several mapped regions of the South Atlantic basin interior. Each unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The regional framework allows plains across the South Atlantic basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that catalog abyssal plains through South Atlantic regional identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific reference region within the basin scale coordinate grid. This regional structure provides a standardized method for representing abyssal plain placement across the South Atlantic basin. Western sectors of the Atlantic basin contain several elongated corridors where abyssal plains are positioned across interior portions of the ocean floor. Global bathymetric charts represent these corridors as extended planar regions located between the continental margins of North and South America and the Central Basin interior. These corridors appear across the western side of Atlantic Basin mapping grids. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently divide the western Atlantic Basin into corridor-shaped geographic sectors used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains located in this part of the basin are assigned to these sectors according to their latitude and longitude coordinates. Each corridor represents a defined spatial band within the Western Atlantic Basin grid. Large bathymetric datasets display Western Atlantic abyssal plains as extensive planar fields extending across interior basin zones adjacent to continental margins. These plains occupy coordinate-defined corridors that run across multiple degrees of latitude within the basin interior. Their placement is recorded through standardized geographic reference systems used in marine mapping programs. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to Western Atlantic corridor sectors. Plains associated with these sectors appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned along the western basin side of the Atlantic. Each corridor grouping allows consistent geographic indexing within Atlantic basin registries. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units aligned along these mapped western basin corridors. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined location derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The corridor structure allows plains across the Western Atlantic Basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that associate abyssal plains with Western Atlantic corridor identifiers. Each mapped plane is linked to a specific coordinate-based corridor inside the Atlantic Basin grid, used in global bathymetric registries. This corridor framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plane placement across the Western Atlantic Basin. Eastern sectors of the Atlantic Basin contain several placement zones where abyssal planes occur across interior areas of the ocean floor adjacent to the continental margins of Europe and Africa. Global bathymetric charts represent these zones as extensive planar surfaces positioned along the eastern side of the Atlantic Basin grid. These zones appear across multiple coordinate ranges, recorded in planetary seafloor mapping systems. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently divide the eastern Atlantic Basin into geographic zones used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal planes mapped in this region are associated with these zones according to latitude and longitude coordinates stored in bathymetric datasets. Each zone represents a defined spatial section of the eastern Atlantic Basin interior. Large bathymetric compilations display eastern Atlantic abyssal plains as wide planar fields extending across basin sectors positioned west of the European and African continental boundaries. These plains occupy coordinate-defined areas that span several degrees of latitude within the basin framework. Their placement is recorded through global coordinate systems used in marine geospatial mapping programs. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to Eastern Atlantic placement zones. Plains associated with these zones appear as grouped seafloor surfaces located along the eastern portion of the basin interior. Each zone grouping allows consistent spatial indexing in Atlantic Basin mapping systems. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across mapped eastern basin zones. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The zone structure allows plains across the eastern Atlantic Basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry frameworks that associate abyssal plains with Eastern Atlantic Placement Zone identifiers. Each mapped plane is linked to a specific coordinate-based zone inside the Atlantic Basin grid used in global bathymetric registries. This zone framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plane placement across the Eastern Atlantic Basin. Oceanographic mapping systems maintain basin-wide registries that catalog abyssal plains distributed throughout the Atlantic Ocean. These registries organize mapped plains as geographic records associated with coordinate positions across the Atlantic Basin grid. Each recorded plane occupies a defined location inside the basin-scale spatial framework. Large bathymetric databases frequently assign indexed identifiers to abyssal plains across the North Atlantic and South Atlantic sectors. These identifiers connect individual plains to geographic sectors adjacent to continental margins and basin interiors. The indexing structure allows numerous plains across the Atlantic Basin to appear as organized entries inside a unified registry system. Many international seafloor atlases incorporate Atlantic Basin registry layers into global bathymetric compilations. These layers list abyssal plains using standardized naming conventions and geographic coordinate references. Each mapped plane is therefore cataloged as part of a structured dataset representing Atlantic Basin seafloor surfaces. Digital terrain models of the Atlantic Ocean commonly store abyssal plains as spatial objects within large geospatial databases. Each object includes geographic metadata, such as latitude, longitude, and basin sector designation. These metadata fields allow registry systems to locate plains accurately within Atlantic Basin mapping grids. Ocean mapping initiatives frequently maintain registry tables that associate abyssal plains with specific Atlantic basin sectors defined by geographical. The stillness of combination is inconvenient and brain to the process of progress on science. Each entry records spatial attributes used for chart indexing and cross-dataset comparison across bathymetric surveys. The registry framework allows plains across distant Atlantic sectors to remain part of the same catalog. Atlantic-wide abyssal plain registries, therefore, function as organizational systems that structure spatial information for the basin interior. Every mapped plain is recorded through coordinate-based identifiers linked to Atlantic basin reference layers. This registry framework supports consistent representation of abyssal plains throughout the Atlantic Ocean mapping grid. Northern sectors of the Indian Ocean basin contain several mapped areas where abyssal plains occupy broad interior portions of the ocean floor. And their global bathymetric charts display these sectors as planar seafloor regions, positioned south of the surrounding continental margins of Asia and the Arabian Peninsula. These sectors appear across the northern portion of the Indian Ocean in planetary seafloor mapping grids. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the northern Indian Ocean basin into geographic sectors that support consistent indexing of seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in this region are associated with these sectors according to their latitude and longitude coordinates. Each sector corresponds to a defined spatial area within the northern Indian Ocean basin framework. Large bathymetric compilations represent northern Indian Ocean abyssal plains as extensive planar surfaces distributed across basin interior sectors. These plains appear in mapping datasets as wide seafloor fields extending across several coordinate ranges of the basin grid. Their placement is recorded through global coordinate systems used in marine geospatial mapping programs. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains within northern Indian Ocean placement sectors. Plains associated with these sectors appear as grouped geographic surfaces positioned across interior basin regions. Each sector grouping supports consistent spatial indexing within Indian Ocean mapping systems. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across several mapped sectors of the northern basin interior. Each unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The sector framework allows plains across the northern Indian Ocean to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that catalog abyssal plains using northern Indian Ocean sector identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific sector inside the basin scale coordinate grid used in global bathymetric registries. This sector structure provides a standardized spatial reference for representing abyssal plains across the northern Indian Ocean basin. Central portions of the Indian Ocean basin contain several reference zones where abyssal plains occupy extensive interior areas of the seafloor. Global bathymetric charts represent these zones as broad planar regions, positioned across the central sectors of the basin grid. These reference zones appear across coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping systems. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently divide the central Indian Ocean basin into geographic zones that support consistent indexing of seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in this part of the basin are associated with these zones according to latitude and longitude coordinates stored in bathymetric datasets. Each zone corresponds to a defined spatial section within the central Indian Ocean basin framework. Large bathymetric compilations represent central Indian Ocean abyssal plains as extensive planar fields distributed across interior basin areas. These plains appear in mapping datasets as wide seafloor surfaces extending across several coordinate ranges within the basin grid. used in global marine mapping systems. Their placement is recorded through standardized geographic reference systems used in bathymetric atlases. Many international oceanographic chart series maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to Central Indian Ocean reference zones. Plains associated with these zones appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned across the basin interior. Each zone grouping allows consistent spatial indexing within Indian Ocean mapping datasets. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across mapped central basin zones. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The zone structure allows plains across the central Indian Ocean basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry frameworks that associate abyssal plains with Central Indian Ocean zone identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific coordinate-based zone inside the basin scale grid used in global bathymetric registries. This zone framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plain placement across the Central Indian Ocean basin. Southern portions of the Indian Ocean basin contain several geographic bands where abyssal plains are distributed across broad interior areas of the seafloor. Global bathymetric charts represent these bands as extended planar regions positioned across the southern sectors of the basin grid. These distribution bands appear across coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping frameworks. Oceanographic mapping systems frequently divide the southern Indian Ocean into spatial bands that support geographic indexing of seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains located in this region are assigned to these bands according to their latitude and longitude coordinates. Each band corresponds to a defined sector within the southern Indian Ocean basin framework. Large bathymetric datasets display southern Indian Ocean abyssal plains as extensive planar fields extending across interior basin areas. These plains occupy coordinate-defined bands that span multiple degrees of latitude within the basin grid used in global marine mapping systems. Their placement is recorded through standardized geographic reference systems used in bathymetric atlases. Many international oceanographic chart series maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to southern Indian Ocean distribution bands. Plains associated with these bands appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned across the southern basin interior. Each band grouping allows consistent spatial indexing within Indian Ocean mapping datasets. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units arranged across mapped southern basin bands. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined location derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The band structure allows plains across the southern Indian Ocean basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that associate abyssal plains with southern Indian Ocean band identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific coordinate-based band inside the basin scale grid used in global bathymetric registries. This band framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plain placement across the southern Indian Ocean basin. Western sectors of the Indian Ocean basin contain several elongated corridors where abyssal plains are positioned across interior areas of the seafloor. Global bathymetric charts display these corridors as extended planar regions located along the western portion of the Indian Ocean basin grid. These corridors appear across coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping systems. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently divide the western Indian Ocean into corridor-shaped geographic sectors used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains napped in this region are associated with these sectors according to latitude and longitude coordinates stored in bathymetric datasets. Each corridor corresponds to a defined spatial band within the Western Indian Ocean Basin framework. Large bathymetric compilations represent Western Indian Ocean abyssal plains as extensive planar fields extending across interior basin areas adjacent to continental margins of Eastern Africa and nearby ocean sectors. These plains occupy coordinate-defined corridors that span multiple degrees of latitude within the basin mapping grid. Their placement is recorded through standardized geographic reference systems used in marine mapping programs. Many international oceanographic atlases maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to Western Indian Ocean corridor sectors. Plains associated with these sectors appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned across the Western Basin interior. Each corridor grouping allows consistent spatial indexing within Indian Ocean mapping datasets. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units aligned along these mapped Western Basin corridors. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined position, derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The corridor structure allows plains across the Western Indian Ocean Basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that associate abyssal plains with Western Indian Ocean corridor identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific coordinate-based corridor inside the basin-scale grid used in global bathymetric registries. This corridor framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plain placement across the Western Indian Ocean Basin. Eastern sectors of the Indian Ocean Basin contain several placement regions where abyssal plains occupy broad interior areas of the seafloor. Global bathymetric charts represent these regions as extensive planar surfaces positioned along the eastern portion of the Indian Ocean Basin grid. These placement regions appear across coordinate ranges recorded in planetary seafloor mapping systems. Oceanographic mapping frameworks frequently divide the Eastern Indian Ocean Basin into geographic regions used for indexing seafloor surfaces. Abyssal plains mapped in this part of the basin are associated with these regions according to latitude and longitude coordinates stored in bathymetric datasets. Each region corresponds to a defined spatial section within the Eastern Indian Ocean Basin framework. Large bathymetric compilations display Eastern Indian Ocean abyssal plains as wide planar fields distributed across basin interior sectors, located west of the Australian continental margin. These plains appear in mapping datasets as extensive seafloor surfaces extending across multiple coordinate ranges within the basin grid used in marine geospatial mapping systems. The placement is recorded through standardized geographic reference systems used in global bathymetric atlases. Many international oceanographic chart series maintain classification layers that categorize abyssal plains according to Eastern Indian Ocean placement regions. Plains associated with these regions appear as grouped seafloor surfaces positioned across the Eastern Basin interior. Each region grouping allows consistent spatial indexing within Indian Ocean mapping datasets. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean frequently represent abyssal plains as spatial units distributed across mapped Eastern Basin regions. Each mapped unit occupies a coordinate-defined position derived from bathymetric surveys and satellite altimetry datasets. The regional framework allows plains across the Eastern Indian Ocean Basin to appear as organized geographic groupings. Global seafloor databases maintain registry systems that associate abyssal plains with Eastern Indian Ocean region identifiers. Each mapped plain is linked to a specific coordinate-based region inside the basin-scale grid used in global bathymetric registries. This regional framework provides a structured reference for representing abyssal plain placement across the eastern Indian Ocean basin. Oceanographic mapping systems maintain basin-wide registries that catalog abyssal plains distributed across the Indian Ocean. These registries organize mapped plains as geographic entries linked to coordinate positions within the Indian Ocean basin grid. Each entry represents a recorded seafloor surface associated with a defined spatial location in the basin framework. Large bathymetric databases frequently assign indexed identifiers to abyssal plains across northern, central, eastern, and southern sectors of the Indian Ocean. These identifiers connect individual plains to geographic sectors used in global seafloor mapping systems. The indexing structure allows multiple plains across the basin to appear as organized entries inside a unified registry system. Many international seafloor atlases integrate Indian Ocean registry layers into global bathymetric compilations. These layers list abyssal plains using standardized naming conventions and coordinate-based geographic references. Each mapped plain therefore appears as a catalogued entry within a structured dataset representing Indian Ocean seafloor surfaces. Digital terrain models of the Indian Ocean commonly store abyssal plains as spatial objects within large geospatial databases. Each object includes geographic metadata, such as latitude, longitude, and basin sector classification. These metadata fields allow registry systems to locate plains accurately within Indian Ocean mapping grids. Ocean mapping initiatives frequently maintain registry tables that associate abyssal plains with specific Indian Ocean sectors defined through geographic coordinates. Each entry records spatial attributes used for chart indexing and comparison across bathymetric surveys. The registry framework allows plains across distant Indian Ocean sectors to remain part of the same basin-wide catalog. Indian Ocean abyssal plain registries therefore function as organizational systems that structure spatial information across the basin interior. Every mapped plain is recorded through coordinate-based identifiers connected to Indian Ocean reference layers. This registry framework supports consistent representation of abyssal plains throughout the Indian Ocean mapping grid. Global bathymetric mapping systems apply cross-basin alignment grids that position abyssal plains from multiple ocean basins inside a unified spatial framework. These grids organize seafloor surfaces according to global coordinate references that extend continuously across the world ocean. Abyssal plains, mapped in separate basins, appear within the same planetary grid through shared geographic positioning. Oceanographic atlases commonly integrate Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian basin datasets into large-scale distribution grids. In these grids, abyssal plains are recorded as spatial units aligned through latitude and longitude coordinates that span multiple ocean basins. Each plain occupies a defined location relative to this global coordinate matrix. Large bathymetric compilations present abyssal plains across the world ocean as planar fields arranged within cross-basin grid systems. These systems use standardized map projections that allow plains in different basins to be displayed within a single spatial environment. The grid structure supports direct geographic comparison between plains located in distant ocean sectors. International seafloor mapping initiatives frequently maintain global grid layers that register abyssal plains alongside other seafloor surfaces within planetary bathymetric models. These layers provide coordinate-based alignment between basin datasets derived from different mapping programs. Abyssal plains appear in these models as spatial entries connected through the shared global grid. Digital ocean terrain databases often apply cross-basin indexing frameworks that associate mapped plains with planetary coordinate intervals. Each entry in these databases records the geographic placement of a plane relative to the global grid used across ocean basins. The indexing structure allows planes from different basins to appear as aligned spatial records. Global abyssal plane alignment grids therefore function as large-scale reference frameworks that integrate basin datasets into a continuous mapping system. Planes across multiple ocean basins are positioned through standardized coordinate references applied in global bathymetric registries. This grid structure supports consistent representation of abyssal planes across the planetary ocean surface. Global ocean mapping systems often represent abyssal planes through inter-ocean distribution corridors that extend across multiple basin environments. These corridors appear in planetary bathymetric charts as elongated spatial zones connecting plane regions across different ocean sectors. The corridor framework positions planes from separate basins inside a continuous global distribution grid. Oceanographic atlases frequently display these corridors using latitude-based or longitudinal reference bands that cross basin boundaries. Abyssal planes mapped within the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans occupy positions aligned along these broad geographic corridors. Each corridor corresponds to a coordinate-defined pathway within the global seafloor mapping system. Large bathymetric compilations present abyssal planes from multiple oceans as spatial units positioned along these inter-ocean corridors. The corridors extend across the planetary ocean surface through standardized coordinate projections used in global cartographic datasets. Planes located in distant basins appear aligned when displayed within this shared grid structure. International seafloor mapping initiatives often maintain corridor-based indexing layers within global bathymetric models. These layers connect abyssal planes from different ocean basins through common geographic intervals recorded in seafloor databases. Each mapped plane therefore appears as part of a corridor grouping defined by planetary coordinate ranges. Digital ocean terrain models frequently integrate basin datasets into global grids that emphasize corridor-like distribution paths across the world ocean. Abyssal planes associated with these paths appear as aligned planar regions extending across multiple ocean sectors. Their placement is determined by geographic coordinates stored in large-scale marine mapping archives. Inter-ocean abyssal plane corridors therefore function as spatial reference pathways that connect plane distributions across basin boundaries. Planes across several ocean basins appear positioned along these corridors within global bathymetric registries. The corridor framework provides a comparative spatial structure for representing abyssal planes across the planetary ocean grid. Global bathymetric mapping systems often organize abyssal planes into clustering sectors that appear across multiple ocean basins. These sectors represent geographic groupings of planar seafloor surfaces positioned within large-scale distribution grids. Abyssal planes located in separate basins may appear within the same clustering sector when mapped through planetary coordinate frameworks. Oceanographic atlases frequently display clustering sectors as broad spatial zones that contain several abyssal planes across different ocean regions. These sectors are defined through latitude and longitude intervals used in global seafloor mapping systems. Planes located inside these coordinate ranges appear as grouped entries within the same sector. Large bathymetric compilations show clustering sectors as repeating spatial categories applied across the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Ocean datasets. Abyssal planes assigned to these sectors are registered through geographic coordinates that correspond to shared planetary grid intervals. The clustering structure allows planes from distant basins to be organized within the same spatial grouping. International seafloor mapping initiatives maintain classification layers that assign abyssal plains to clustering sectors within global bathymetric registries. Each sector includes multiple plains associated with defined geographic ranges across the world ocean. These sectors function as reference categories for comparative mapping of plain distributions. Digital ocean terrain databases frequently implement sector-based indexing systems that group abyssal plains through geographic clustering patterns. Each mapped plain is associated with a sector identifier derived from planetary coordinate grids. The indexing structure allows global datasets to display plains as part of broader cluster groupings. Global abyssal plain clustering sectors therefore serve as spatial reference zones that organize planar seafloor surfaces across ocean basins. Plains distributed throughout the world ocean appear within these sectors through standardized coordinate indexing. The clustering framework provides a comparative spatial structure for representing abyssal plains across the global ocean grid. Global seafloor mapping systems often identify adjacency zones, where abyssal plains from different ocean basins appear positioned within nearby planetary coordinate ranges. These zones represent spatial areas where plain distributions from multiple basins occur in relatively close geographic alignment within global bathymetric grids. Abyssal plains located in separate ocean sectors may appear adjacent when displayed through planetary mapping frameworks. Oceanographic atlases frequently display adjacency zones using large coordinate blocks that extend across basin boundaries. Plains mapped within the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans may fall inside neighboring coordinate intervals within these global reference grids. The adjacency zones provide a spatial framework for comparing plain locations across basin divisions. Large bathymetric compilations present abyssal plains across several basins inside unified map projections that reveal proximity relationships between distant ocean regions. Plains positioned in adjacent coordinate sectors appear within the same large-scale distribution zones. These zones highlight spatial relationships across basin boundaries within the planetary ocean grid. International seafloor mapping initiatives maintain global indexing layers that record abyssal plains through coordinate identifiers spanning multiple ocean basins. These identifiers allow plains from different basins to appear as neighboring entries in global bathymetric datasets. The adjacency framework supports comparative placement across basin-scale registries. Digital ocean terrain models frequently integrate basin datasets into planetary grids that emphasize adjacency relationships among abyssal plains. Plains recorded in separate basins may appear within neighboring spatial cells inside these models. The adjacency pattern emerges from coordinate alignment across the global mapping system. Multi-basin adjacency zones therefore function as spatial reference regions that organize abyssal plains to comparative geographic positioning. Plains from several ocean basins appear within these zones through standardized coordinate indexing. The adjacency structure provides a large-scale framework for representing abyssal plain placement across the global ocean grid. Global seafloor mapping systems frequently organize abyssal plains according to hemispheric alignment sets that divide the planetary ocean surface into northern and southern geographic frameworks. These sets use the equatorial reference line as a primary coordinate boundary, separating two major hemispheric sectors. Abyssal plains, recorded in global bathymetric datasets, are positioned within one of these hemispheric alignment groups. Oceanographic atlases commonly display hemispheric alignment sets through latitude-based grid systems that extend across multiple ocean basins. Plains located in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans appear within either the northern or southern hemispheric coordinate range. Each plain is indexed according to geographic latitude values recorded in global seafloor mapping grids. Large bathymetric compilations represent hemispheric alignment through global map projections that display the world ocean in two large geographic divisions. Abyssal plains, distributed across several basins, appear grouped according to their placement relative to the equator. The hemispheric structure allows global comparisons of plain distributions across wide ocean regions. International seafloor mapping initiatives maintain classification layers that record abyssal plains through hemispheric identifiers stored in bathymetric datasets. Each mapped plane is associated with a hemisphere through geographic coordinate metadata. This classification allows planes across multiple basins to appear as entries within shared hemispheric groups. Digital ocean terrain models frequently implement hemispheric indexing systems that assign abyssal plains to northern or southern global sectors. Each spatial unit representing a plane contains latitude-based metadata that determines its hemispheric alignment. The indexing structure allows basin datasets to be integrated into large planetary distribution frameworks. Hemispheric abyssal plane alignment sets therefore function as global spatial categories that organize seafloor plains according to planetary latitude divisions. Planes across the world ocean appear within these sets through standardized coordinate indexing. The hemispheric framework provides a large-scale reference structure for comparing abyssal plane placement across multiple ocean basins. Global ocean mapping systems maintain planetary registries that catalog abyssal plains across all major ocean basins within a unified geospatial framework. These registries organize mapped plains as indexed geographic entries linked to planetary coordinate systems used in global bathymetric datasets. Each entry corresponds to a specific abyssal plane positioned inside the worldwide seafloor mapping grid. Large bathymetric databases frequently assign globally unique identifiers to abyssal plains recorded in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. These identifiers connect each plane to standardized geographic coordinates and basin reference sectors. The identifier structure allows planes from multiple ocean regions to appear as organized entries inside a single planetary registry. International seafloor atlases integrate basin-level datasets into global catalogs that list abyssal plains through consistent naming conventions and coordinate references. Each mapped plane is recorded as a distinct geographic unit inside these planetary seafloor catalogs. The catalog structure supports cross-basin comparison of plane positions across the world ocean. Digital ocean terrain databases commonly represent abyssal plains as spatial objects stored in global geospatial repositories. Each object includes metadata fields that record latitude, longitude, and ocean basin classification. These metadata attributes allow registry systems to locate planes accurately within the planetary bathymetric grid. Oceanographic mapping initiatives frequently maintain registry tables that compile abyssal plane records from numerous bathymetric surveys. Each table entry contains geographic attributes used for chart indexing and dataset integration across global mapping programs. The registry structure allows planes from distant ocean basins to remain part of a coordinated planetary dataset. Planetary abyssal plane network registries therefore function as comprehensive organizational systems for mapping seafloor planes across the global ocean. Every mapped plane appears as a coordinate-defined entry linked to standardized geospatial reference layers. This registry framework supports consistent global representation of abyssal planes within planetary bathymetric mapping systems. Across the world's oceans, abyssal planes form an immense network of seafloor surfaces that span multiple ocean basins. When viewed through global mapping systems, these planes appear as organized geographic regions positioned within a larger planetary grid. Their placement across the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans reveals a broad spatial pattern that extends across much of the deep ocean floor. If you enjoyed this calm exploration of Earth's hidden landscapes, consider subscribing to Quiet Facts for more science videos like this. You can also leave a like and share your thoughts or questions in the comments below.